Hello and welcome back to Magic in the Noise. Today we have new guests and returning guests, and so we'll start out with me. I'm Sasha. I'm co-founder of Magic in the Noise, and I set out these monthly targets for the public, inviting anyone and everyone who's a remote viewer to submit a session. And then I invite the top submitters to come and join us to discuss their hits and their process and just have a conversation about the data. And this month, the target that we're going to be revealing today was the blue Elizondo black disc that came up from under the ocean and swallowed up a US missile. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. But first, I'll let everybody else introduce themselves. So David?
Hi, my name is David. I'm the other half of Magic in the Noise, and I'm here to participate, but although I did not remote view. But I did see the viewers work, and I thought everybody did a great job.
Thank you, David. And Chris?
Hey everyone, I'm Chris, also called Chilio online. I've been remote viewing for about around the COVID period. I've dabbled with a lot of different remote viewing methodologies, but now I'm using Sasha's methodology. And as usual, I'm super happy to be here.
Thank you, Chris. And then we have Michael.
Hey everybody, my name is Michael. I've been remote viewing for just over a year, and I am currently 3 months into a mentorship of using full spectrum illumination with Sasha. So I'm having a lot of fun with that, learning quite a lot, and really enjoying the process.
Thank you, Michael. Michael's sending great data, so we'll see some of that today. And Cody.
Hi, I'm Cody from Australia, and the method I use is CRB.
Nice. And then Claudia?
Hi, I'm Claudia. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm doing remote viewing now for around 3 years. Also working with full spectrum illumination from Sasha, and I love doing it. It's so fun. So join, I would say.
Oh, thank you, Claudia. I love your enthusiasm. It's infectious. And then this month we have with us John.
Hello, everybody. I'm John from the US, and I've been remote viewing a little over a year, and I practice TDRV methodology.
Nice. And John, you get great data, so we're happy to have you here today. And Jeff?
So Jeff from Chicago, I use what is based upon the Hawaii Remote Viewers Guild method, maybe modified a little bit just to my liking, and did not have a whole lot of time this week. This month, started a session, had some interesting bits, intended to go back and wish that I had and done I was going to do a complete session, but got some nice, interesting bits.
That's, I see it with myself. I see it in other remote viewers. It's always the session that you quit early. It's always the one you wish you had done more on. Or it's the data point where you think, should I do this for an extra page? No, I won't. And then that's always the one you wish you had.
Yeah, just as a side piece of information for me, because I see a parallel to this, whether it's true or not, is like when I meditate, you can meditate for like a long time and you're fidgety and all this stuff, right? But like when you give up, like right at the last, like you got 5 minutes left or something, all of a sudden that's when you have like the best sort of experience. So I'm just saying it's hilarious because I saw your work, Jeff, and I was like, oh my God, like this is amazing. Look what he did. But it was like you said, you didn't really get to do much with it. And I wonder if it's kind of that element where you just, that's all the space you had to work with, and some part of you knew that, and it's just like, okay, go time, and and you just produce. But I thought it was really interesting.
Yeah, it's a funny thing to see. That's a good point, because the data stream does seem to know, it doesn't process time linearly. And so it is interesting that it does seem to have a sense of, oh, you're only going to do 1.5 pages. Okay, so I'll give you as much information as I can in those 1.5 pages, right? So yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon. So let's start with the slides. Let me change the view. There we go. That's actually a little bit small, so I'm going to try to make that a little bit bigger. I think we'll just go with that for now. So yeah, so this is the reveal. The target came from an interview between Chris Ramsey from YouTube channel Area 52 and Lou Elizondo. And in it, Lou Elizondo describes this enormous black disc that rose up from the ocean off the coast of Puerto Rico, where the US military were testing missiles that were nuclear weapons capable. Excuse me. And so the black disk rose up from the very, very deep depths that are there off the coast of Puerto Rico and just swallowed up one of the missiles, and then it shot away underwater. A few things to note about this event, because it is relevant to the data. There was a helicopter there, and basically they were dropping the missiles somehow, and then they had divers, and the divers were strapping the missiles back into the helicopters so that they could then move them out of the way for the next test. And so we did see people picking up on the scuba divers that are strapping the missile. We saw people picking up on the helicopters. And so it was really interesting to see. I guess the caveat I want to make here is we're not claiming that this happened, where the target isn't taking this as an event that happened. The target is that here's something that Lou Elizondo is claiming, and let's investigate the claim. And so whether it happened or not, we can look through the data and see if there's some suggestions that this was a real event, or suggestions that it's maybe slightly different than the story that he told. And so we'll be looking for that in the data today. And so a little bit more about it. The target itself, I asked the viewers to describe the origin of the black circular craft, where it came from, who designed it, and for what purpose, and if it was a real event. And so for this target, some people were retasked to provide additional details. And so that's why I was able to kind of cover a lot of data for this. And I'm just repositioning myself. And so to start out, we start out with Cody, and the color coding around the images tell you which remote viewer provided that data. So along the bottom of the screen here, you should see the different color codes with all the viewer names on them and the type of remote viewing style that they use, method that they use. So Cody here in blue, do you want to say a little bit about your data? Because what I see here is the positioning of the missiles. I think that the divers that are trying to strap it in so that the helicopter can move the missiles out of the way, I thought this was really good data for that. What do you think?
Yeah, the whole session had this theme of it had something to do with the angle of the object, and I really struggled with it. I couldn't work out what it meant or anything, but it did not feel like it was in the water. So that's I don't know what happened there, but I struggled with this one. It was just the angle and the object. I didn't think it was a UFO or anything, but it definitely felt like a rocket or a failed rocket launch or something like that.
Yes. I think one of the things, a lot of people weren't sure if it was in water or in air. And so I've seen that before in remote viewing sessions for things like this. So it's an interesting phenomenon to kind of keep track of.
Yeah, and since the cruise missile was supposedly swallowed up by this UFO, like at what point did you actually pick up on the cruise missile? If it was inside the UFO, it might have been very confusing as to what was going on with it,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it felt at one part of the session, it felt like it was a plane shot out of the sky or a rocket or something like that. But the water, I did pick up on water at one point, but it didn't feel like it was in the water. It felt like it was near water.
Yes. Yeah. So moving forward,
they also said this thing was like the size of an island. Is one of the terms they use. So I'm just saying, like, if this rocket was inside an island-shaped UFO, it would be more considered near water, because it's so the space around it is so huge.
The craft is so big.
Yeah. Also, I felt like the object was white, like bone white. So I don't know if I was picking up on the whatever they dropped in the water, but yeah, I don't know.
You had some interesting data here as well, Cody, where you had this sense of something stealth, And you had, this drawing, you were really picking up on the tilt of the angle. And I'm wondering if the craft itself, in order to absorb the missile, had to come in at a specific angle to swallow it up and keep moving. So it was interesting data.
Could be.
Yeah. And then here again, that idea of this is island size according to Lou, and it's this huge black disc that opens a hole up to swallow the missile. And so I think you were drawing this as a big hole in the ground, but I see the correspondence. Yeah. And then here you have the UFO, the shock wave, and the lights coming off of it. So I thought that was really, really good data. And then here, Michael drew a circular craft-like thing. And I just thought it was interesting because the angle that he's using for his shape matches. You can see right here, the match between his inner shape and yours is kind of similar. And so, Michael, did you want to say a few things about this, about your data here?
Yeah. So yeah, one of the things that kind of came up around this was that, some type of like soldiers perhaps were involved. I got the impression of like water coming off of it too, which is kind of like a bit interesting. Like off the sides of it, you can sort of see, lower down the side there too. So, but I also felt like there was like an interiority to it as well too. Like it wasn't just like a platform or something. So kind of came across as like just a divot in the center. But I still couldn't quite wrap my head around like how it specifically kind of like parse up the geometry of what was kind of going on there. So. Yeah, it was definitely kind of an interesting target to try and work with there.
Yeah, I think it was still interesting data. I think you picked up on some interesting elements. When we go back to Cody, some of you had two things that were rising up. And so I wonder if there was another craft maybe nearby, keeping an eye on things. Michael, you had the sense of a navigational beacon, and Cody as well brought up that sense of a navigation vector underestimating. I thought that was excuse me, an interesting correspondence. Yeah. And Cody, your motion here, feeling something high above, going around the curve. I do think that was probably just the size of this round craft swallowing up the UFO. And here, Jeff, so on the left, this was the first page of your session. And I thought it was really amazing because you have the helicopters, you have the aliens, you have the hole that's swallowing up the missile, and you have the water all on the first page. So that was fantastic. Do you want to talk a little bit about your data here?
You're muted.
Hold on. Again, this is all very quick. When I drew two aliens, I thought, okay, this is a Sasha target, and that doesn't mean aliens. That means a Sasha target, but who knows? But the most experiential thing was the helicopter. It was as though I could feel the vibration of the helicopter. It was like a big mass of metal in the air. It wasn't some little helicopter. It was enormous, and it had a red X on it. I wrote medical chopper, but I'm surprised that I did, because rescue chopper was actually the words that were in my head, and they were, in a sense, rescuing the missile or recovering the missile.
That's interesting. Yeah, it's amazing that you were able to see that and pick up on that. You also picked up on the sense of the military being there.
Yes.
Yeah, I looked at that page because that was your first page, and I was just laughing because I was like, man, he's like telling the whole thing like in one page, like really fast. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah. And so this is the one that then was kind of cut short, but that's okay because you had the main concepts really well defined, and even some kind of an undersea animal with fins. So that was fun to see.
So there was one more page to that, and I had a duck, and this is just learning my subconscious's language. Anytime I see a duck, that says that there's water involved at the target. That's sort of one of the things I'm taking away from this. So
it's good to have that shorthand kind of communication with your symbols. Yeah. And that page will come up later in the slides.
Okay.
And then here, your hiding place, your kind of tubular bucket thing, Jeff, I thought was an amazing match for Chris, your kind of bucket data. So Chris, do you want to tell us a little bit about this and how you think it relates to the target?
Um, I need to think a bit because this particular one I didn't really match on my personal data.
Because of seeing other people's data, a lot of people were describing a tube. We're going to see that in John's work as well, a tube in a UFO, an opening, something going down into a tube or a cylinder or a hollow. So I kind of saw that as the opening or the cavity inside the UFO that they're sucking the missile into. That's how I made sense of it. Does that fit, do you think, with your sense of the data?
Yeah, it could. On my first page, I had something that was going up and rounded as well. Here, my interpretation of the bucket thing on the top left could maybe be linked to the missile being intercepted and being taken inside of this thing that I call a bucket here, which makes sense with what I put, that it's like for political reasons. I mean, high level political, because in theory, if this is true, it's always the same story that we're screwing the planet by playing with nuclear stuff, and they're just canceling those missiles, saying stop doing random things.
Yes,
So it is political in that sense. It's weird to speak about politics when we speak about a UFO, but it is in the end political. So
yes.
yeah, to me, the idea here was more in that way that I see matching with the data, and on the other one, it was really about the pressure of something coming out. So to me, it could also be the thing coming out of the ocean at some point, because I mean, if they do exist, we don't know how they work, but there's definitely pressure somewhere. I mean, in water.
Yes. I think for me here, seeing something is taken illegally, I thought that was a good description of a UFO grabbing a missile, and the idea the space is sucked up or into this. I thought it was just really interesting data, and the correlation, excuse me, with Jeff's is really good. And then here, so again, for a UFO, I know you don't like UFO targets. So I wasn't expecting to see a glowing disc in your session. But I think you did have some data that I thought matched well enough with the story. There was also some interesting, I did ask about the origin, who sent the craft, who designed it, and you did bring in this female. And Jeff also talked about a female voice, hearing a female voice near the image of the water. And so I just thought if you could tell us a little bit, especially the sense of physics, mystery, universe, math linked, how that came through for you.
So here I was trying to perceive if there were life linked to it, and I really got that sense of that this, whatever it was being brought to life by someone. So, which is that depiction in the center. It felt female, and it felt like I was speaking at that moment about some type of big energy, and this is what she's holding inside of her hands. And so I had the perception that it was the culmination of that person's life's work. So I'm not really sure how this would relate to the target here, but my idea was that this was initiated by someone. There's someone that's behind that thing. Here, if it's the technology of some kind, there is someone behind it. But yeah, I mean, depending on what's true and what it is, it could also be whoever is on the human side dealing with that. Yeah, I'm not really sure.
Well, I think it's interesting on two levels, because one, I did ask in the tasking for you to tell me about who created the craft. And so I think you're very good, Chris, at answering direct questions in the tasking. And you typically word it in a way where it's clear that you're answering the tasking question, or sometimes you just tell me what the tasking question is in your session. So that's always really fun to see. But, you know, it's something, and we were talking to someone earlier this week about this, there does seem to be this effect where men who have interactions with entities that, in the realm of either meditation or enlightenment, but also UFOs, for men, they typically do come through as women, as beautiful women, as loving women, as more elevated, more advanced women. And so when I saw this in your session, this woman, and she's advanced, she has this extreme technology, and she's created this. I see the parallels there. I think it's a pattern that I'm noticing more and more that I find quite intriguing. So so for UFO targets, alien targets is something I'm going to be keeping my eye open for. And I think one of the ways I see it as is, if I wanted to communicate with another species, I want to come off as non-threatening. I want to put them at ease, especially if I'm very different. And so it makes sense to me, because of how humans are, that if you're interacting with a male, you present as female, because that's seen as less threatening, right? It's more disarming. So it's an interesting link. And so then,
or if it's just superior, and I mean, it could also be like the mother feel.
yeah, that makes sense too. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And then here, because
yeah,
I
just
don't know.
on the previous slide, I was speaking about some kind of discovery on the previous slide, and I questioned that this whole thing was shining a light on something, on what, and then I put like physics mystery, universe mystery, and math mystery. They're all linked together to make a whole, and I mean, this would definitely make sense. I mean, if you have a gigantic circle coming out of the ocean, it's definitely something that we don't understand in terms of physics, the universe, and maths today. So I think that's good data.
And Ashton Forbes talks a lot about free energy in relation to orbs and UFOs. So as an advanced tech that some humans maybe have access to. So I think that that's an interesting thing as well. And I think we'll come back to some of the data suggestions in a few next few slides. But there's something here that I thought was interesting, because I know that I know you don't necessarily welcome UFO targets, and I was wondering, here you're describing this home, and it's something David and I.
It's not really a home. It was more like an office. That's why I put 2,000 windows. So the feeling was really that there was stuff coming back to this place and stuff being emitted back from this place. So communication somehow, telecommunication, and people were working there. And yeah, so there was incoming messages, outgoing messages, and there was some part of operations with people working there. So something is happening in that building related to the target. And there's a lot of people working there. So,
well, one of the things I wanted to suggest, because it's something that David and I kind of brought up when we were looking at your data together, is this the UFO that you're describing, right? And because you have a bias away from drawing a big circular craft, a UFO, is it coming through to you in a representation that's more acceptable to you? And because he described the UFO as big as an island, so it would make sense to me that the idea that it's more of a workplace, that there may be people, entities, beings, maybe humans, we don't really know, inside of it, that are doing a job because they're coming to collect the missile, right? And so it's an interesting, maybe alternative interpretation.
it is an alternative interpretation that's valuable. To me, it would still make sense to have this as a bit more literal, because I mean, again, if this is true, I would imagine that there is the whole military people in their offices going crazy with what the hell happened to our missile. So I think they were controlling the missile as well, and I guess there's a lot of stuff that happened in that workspace.
Yes, and it's part of an operation of some sort, and information gathering. You also have disinformation, small truths to hide, and big lies. And so the flavor of disinfo, of deception, in this kind of a target, I think is interesting to pay attention to. But as well,
that could also be linked to Lou Elizondo. I mean, we don't know if what he's saying is true. We don't really know who he really works for or what his real agenda is. I
Yeah.
I personally think he's a genuine guy, but you never know. So maybe he's part of a whole of disinformation thing.
Yeah, I
And maybe
think
what he's saying, there are small truths, but to hide the bigger lies, or maybe not. It's
from
just
your data,
interesting.
it seems that your data does suggest that. So, and we'll see in other people's data if there's corroboration for that as well. This is Patrick, who is not here with us today, but he also saw, this cave-like claustrophobic place inside, underground, is dark. And we'll see this in a lot of people's data, that idea of the tube or something, the hole that's sucking things in. Chris, I think you did a good job for what the target looked like in the past, in the now, and in the future. You brought up the idea of under a dome, and I thought that was hilarious because then, Jeff, in your session, you mentioned the duck being a representation of water. You also had this idea of a protected dome or a biodome. And then Greg also
With
has
directions going up and
yeah,
down.
yeah, exactly. So if Jeff, if you want to say something about this.
I'm not sure what I have more to add. In hindsight, was that something related to the missile? Was that something related to the UFO? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I was just trying. Yeah, and I just need a few. We don't have Greg with us, and I realized I don't know if he knows how to access the StreamYard link. So, David, if you can check our email and see if there's something from Greg there. He is in chat, though. Hello, Greg. If you want to come in, jump in. David's going to resend the email with the link to you, and you can come and talk about your data with us. And so, David, if you can take care of that, that would be great. Here, again, so Chris, you have the 314, which is pi, which is one of the constants you use to calculate dimensions of a circle. And so I did think that was kind of interesting just to see that in your numbers. And then Cody, you kind of had the coast of Puerto Rico, which is interesting. And Jeff was also picking up on the beach. And so everyone's kind of picking up on the location. So here, Claudia, you drew a location for this, and you have lighthouses. We're going to see that in later data. I wanted you to talk a little bit because I think you had a good sense of the location of it. And Chris, it kind of matches. Chris, if you reverse your mapping, I think it's a good outline of Puerto Rico.
That's what I thought as well.
And you also have all these P words, Peria, Peral, and I think the concept of Puerto Rico maybe trying to come through in your words makes sense. You also had money. There's this island of Mona that's just off the coast of Puerto Rico. So I wondered if your money, the word coming in, was actually the Isle of Mona. And so let's start with Claudia, if you want to jump in here, and I'm just gonna check on Greg.
Yes, I have to double check my data. Yeah, I had really the feeling it was along the seaside, so something happened there, and well, I saw steep mountains, so it felt indeed like I didn't write it, but it felt like South American, and but also a lot of forest. So yeah, what more can I say? Did I mention GPS coordinates? Yeah.
Yeah, I did check
Yeah.
on your GPS
Yeah.
coordinates as well. And so those are Puerto Rico is 1760 minus 67, and you had, I think, 1727. I think it was close. It was interesting.
Yes,
So
I had west 18. That's on the height of Puerto Rico. Yeah, but I
yes,
was more but it's really amazing that these things come up. Yeah.
yes. And I do think that the shape is really good. And John, you had this idea of this landform here, feeling important, this island. And so I put that in there as well because I think it kind of mirrors some of the other viewers' data. And Chris, do you want to say something about your outline of the landform?
Yeah, like you said, after the review, I was looking at this and I thought that it was a pretty good match if you reverse what I put as water and land. And so when I was doing the session, I put a few X's as well. I tend to do that to try to put spots where I think something relevant is happening, or there is something relevant there. But it's true that if you reverse it, it does kind of look like the border of Puerto Rico. And I see in your slide on the top, you put an X. This is the alleged place it took place, right?
This is the general area where it took place. The
Yeah,
X is the longitude and latitude.
because if we reverse my thing, then my point A and my point B could be the places where it actually happened. I mean,
Yes.
it does make sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So I thought that was really good data. Chris and Claudia, your landforms, your locations are always really interesting. A lot of accuracy there. So that's really nice to see. And Claudia, I think you did a really good job of drawing the island and getting that sense of it. Greg, if you're still in chat, we sent you the link so that you can join us in StreamYard. So we'll be listening for that. Just click on the link in the email and it'll take you right here. And so again, I think the metaphor is there's a bit of an overlay here in your data, but I think Chris, you did a good job here as well. The beauty, all of this, I tie this to this idea of a UFO, maybe this idea of string theory, matrix decoding, interconnectedness, the spiritual overlay. And again, it doesn't say that we're describing a real UFO, but we are describing the UFO that Lou Elizondo was talking about in the interview. And so I thought there was some interesting data there. The lighthouse. So Claudia, you have the 2 lighthouses on your island of Puerto Rico. Michael, you also had this lighthouse in the area, and Chris also had a lighthouse. So this seems to be something that was coming out for each of you. So Michael, how did it come through for you?
Yeah, basically for the lighthouse itself, rather than kind of a beacon, it also for me just appeared to be just kind of like an alarm system, kind of like going off. So to get the idea of like alarm, wariness, caution, got like an image of like a paper airplane as well, with like messages being sent or received. So maybe something around like a message being sent through this like action of some kind by this UFO, perhaps.
Yeah, and I saw myself standing on top of a lighthouse and then watching the water. So that's why I drew both. Because from one lighthouse, I saw the other lighthouse and I saw the ocean. But
And I wonder as well, after the missile went missing, did they bring in lights to search the ocean in that area, right? The military that were doing the test.
yeah,
There might have been something about it.
yeah, that can be.
My
Because
perceptions was really more on the search aspect of it. And like Claudia, I really had this idea of the light looking across the ocean to try to find something. And then I probed for some words, and I had stuff like it's not on screen anymore, but like enigma, mystery. So like it's searching for that crazy thing that just happened.
Yes, yeah, that makes sense, definitely. Let me just move things around.
I got a lot of
here.
frustration around that section too. Like people were like sound of people and crowds, like commotion and stuff. So kind of aligns there too.
That makes sense for the panic that must have ensued.
Yeah.
And then, so here the missiles were nuclear weapon ready. And I feel as though some of you picked up on that idea of nuclear energy. Chris, you even said nuclear fission, atomic level, and you kind of described maybe nuclear energy. You talked about plasma as well. And so I just thought that was really interesting to see that kind of coming through in the data. And
and that's the second one that you were on in the previous slide, the one on the top right. The idea here was that it was really in a short instant. It was really like super fast, and the idea was just something split really fast, and then I had this idea of nuclear fission at atomic level. To me, it does make sense in this event that it would be like the capture of the thing, and it's just finished, and it just disarmed it, or something like that, or deactivated it in some way or the other.
That's an interesting. If it's deactivating the missiles, I think that's something that we've seen reported for UFOs. Doing that to nuclear bases as well, or bases where they have nuclear weapons. And then here, there's just more of kind of the same. And so, Cody, here's your nuclear weapons data. Did you want to say a little bit about this? Because you did see the mushroom cloud and this dangerous energy.
Yeah, it just felt like something crashed, to be honest. Yeah, like I said before, it just felt like something come out of the sky or shot out of the sky, and then when it impacted, it just, I think at one point I had a stray cut of Big Bang, like it was just something crazy like that.
Yeah. So I'm interpreting that in the context of the nuclear concern. And then, Claudia, do you want to tell us a little bit about this? You have a lot of interesting data here. One of the things that was strange is you had this idea of these squares under this shape. And it was bizarre because, Jet, you also had the patterns or openings, and you also had this series of squares. Greg as well had the matrix-like rows of squares. And so, Claudia, I was wondering if you could say a little bit about how the data came through here for you.
Well, the first thing I felt was the very hard substance of the thing, the hard fiber. That was very, very clear. And I saw it red, Chris saw it white, so it's and it should be black. So, but the red thing came up the whole time. Let's see. What I felt with it is the pumping energy. Something happened, and I had the idea it was something which moved along the same track all the time. So later on, when we had the target reveal, I thought maybe it's just a thing which goes down, up and down, or something that it houses there in the depths of the sea under the dome then, and then just comes up and goes down again, something like that.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's the idea I had with it.
Yeah.
So and it was one movement, but I did not feel the nuclear threat in it, but all the things what came back all the time were these metal balls. All the time I had some kind of mechanic energy with it.
And I think, sometimes when there is machine-like components, those can be shiny if we're interested in how things work, so they can keep kind of drawing our attention. So, but I thought that was
maybe this had to do with the on the photo you show, you have this platform with this machine on it.
Yes.
And maybe that's because I had on the other page, I also had some kind of machine with this angle, which looks like that photo. Yeah. But,
so I thought that was really interesting data. So here's this is a little bit more of what you were talking about, right? And I thought,
but again, you see, I did not see the water. I just saw something square. So people are looking at it, and what I see in the middle is white, then also white. But then it should be the black disc, probably.
Well, so I do wonder, because a lot of you didn't see it as in water, is it because sometimes we don't expect to see a flying craft in water? Is it because we don't expect to see an island-sized thing that has maybe think people, maybe entities, beings that are doing stuff in it underwater? Or is it because it's a fake story? And because it's a fake story, Lou, excuse me, in telling his story, he's not necessarily creating the data in his consciousness about it being underwater. That's the story, that's the script he tells. But he's maybe thinking, oh, there's a UFO and it's underwater and it swallowed up the missile. And that's the script that I have to deliver in the interview.
Yeah, could be.
And I'm not saying that he's not being honest. I'm not saying it is a lie or it is a story or propaganda, but I thought that might explain why a lot of you did seem to think of it more as being in air instead of water. So that's just one possibility. And let's go back. Oh, there we go. And so another thing, Claudia, that made me kind of think maybe there's something less than truthful about the story is that you had the bunny. And I know, in your data, it came through having to do with speed and things like that. But you also have this trip down the rabbit hole. So we could interpret that as the missile going down the tube, the hole in the UFO, in the USO. But it could also be this idea of fictional conspiracy. I think that there's a little, I feel like I'm picking up on a little bit of that as well in your data. But you did have this kind of missile moving really quickly as well. And so I thought that was interesting data. In the rabbit hole, I'm not sure. We'll have to look at more of the data. Here's more of your mapping that was really, really good for Puerto Rico. You had the archaeological site, and we'll talk about the relevance of that a little bit later. But then here you describe Lou Elizondo, and I think you did a really good job of describing him.
Yes, I was also astonished when I saw this author of books.
Yeah, and you have the basic details really do seem quite correct. The fact that he's charismatic, that he's talking. He's often in gossip magazines. Like I think that was really, really great data. So you seem to have really connected with him, yes?
Yeah, I liked it too.
Yeah, so I thought that was fantastic. And then here we have John. We have some of your data here. So again, what we were mentioning earlier, you have the hole going down into this tube of something, this shimmering effect, and the idea of teleportation. So do you want to talk a little bit about the data that you have here?
Yeah, shimmering effect. I didn't really know what to think of that, but there was something strange going on that I was picking up on. The hole to below, I just had the visual of that, and somehow perceiving that kind of slot or opening went down into whatever that was. As far as the teleport, that was kind of a stretch. The teleporting, it was the perception was when I probed the target was just. It was like I saw there was like a subject there in real form, and then there were kind of subjects either appearing or disappearing or partly there. So I don't really know what that was. That was kind of a new one to me. And then below that was kind of strange. I was seeing these little spheres or particles or something, and then it was like I zoomed in, was able to zoom in and saw a subject inside there. So that's about it.
Yeah, I think this was incredible data. I think you were really on target. It was really nice to see. You even had, communication code, something rests in a hole or inset location. And then here as well, you had this idea of a submerged mountain. We're going to see that in other people's data as well. And so I just think that this was excellent target contact and really nice data.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. I didn't know what any of it really meant. I never did.
The best sessions are always when you don't know what it is you're describing. And I think partly because when you don't know what you're describing, you don't allow as much of your own personal bias. You just, I don't know what this is, so I'm just going to describe it. And I don't know how it connects to this other weird thing, so I'm just going to describe that. And I feel as though you get much more pure data that way. Whereas when people think, oh, I know what I'm describing, then there's a tendency for filler to creep in. You also had excellent data here as well. You have this round thing, there's a path and orbiting away. carefully plotting or planning, and then you have an object that gets stuck down a hole or an opening. That's exactly what the target was. So you did amazingly well on this target. I think just describing exactly what happened. And here, you had the 2 feet as anchors. I see that as the divers and wrapping the cords around the missiles to strap them up to the helicopter. And then here, your number 1, the different levels. So you have the divers on the ocean level that are strapping up the missiles, and you have the helicopter up above that's working with them in tandem. But I really did think you did a really good job of basically explaining the story of the USO. So great data there. And here as well. So what I thought was interesting in terms of maybe leaning us towards taking the story as maybe more true, you had the concept of ghosts that came in, and I thought that was interesting for a UFO target and heavenly. I actually think that's good data. And yeah, and then the idea of like it reminds you of a flux capacitor. Can you tell us a little bit about the data here that you see?
Yeah.
Oh, your voice is really far away. No, it's still muffled, like really far. A little bit better.
Now better?
It's a little bit better.
About 50% better.
Okay. I'm
There
moving
you
it
are.
closely. Okay. So yeah, the matrix, when I probed on the energy, sometimes I get some weird stuff, but that was kind of a first. I don't know, I just had this kind of image or the perception of the flux capacitor from Back to the Future on their the DeLorean. I don't know. I don't know what other than that what that meant, but yeah, that was interesting. It like was some sort of technology energy source that that's as close as I could get, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
And I think here you're talking about something being dropped airborne. So that's, from the helicopter down, or I think that's good data. And then something deep inside the mountain crevices. To me, seeing your data in the context of other people's data, it looks to me that the origin, where this thing came from, that was part of the tasking. It looks like there are these underwater mountains, because the ocean floor is so deep down in that area that there are mountains down on the ocean bed that are invisible from sea level. And so I do wonder if maybe, and there's the Marianas Trench, like I do wonder if maybe some of these USOs, these undersea objects, unidentified, I do wonder if maybe they're hiding in the depths of those mountains that are under the ocean. So I think that was kind of interesting data.
Yeah, when I got that little inside the mountains, it felt like something was, I don't know if it was like a facility or what that was, but it felt like there was something snuggled in there, deep in there. And I think there was another sketch I had that showed like a crack splitting or something, some deep crack. But yeah, I just had this idea of something kind of hidden, nestled away deep somewhere.
Yeah, to me it feels as though that's answering the task in question about the origin of these things, of these crafts. So really, really good data. And you'll see the
also just exposing the target is really good here, in my opinion. On the top left, I really like the sketch. It just tells everything. I mean, what's the target? It's a big circular thing deflecting or unlocking, securing something that's coming towards it or that it's intercepting. So to me, that sketch is really saying a lot, literally.
Yes, yeah, John, this is a fantastic session. And I have you down here as TDRV, but is that correct, or is it TRV that you use?
It's TDRV. TDRV.
Okay, good. I just had a moment panic there. And then here, so Greg had kind of this city, but again, I think maybe people were putting in the air what might be in the water. But he did have this kind of city-like structures near the water. And so I thought that was really good data. And what strengthens his data is that when he's describing the energy, he's seeing a soul tube or some kind of a sonotube, a cylindrical, and then there's a connection, there's upper current. And so again, this idea of a tube something that things can be sucked into. And he talks about deoxygenated fish, so he's definitely talking about, you know, underwater, deep down. And so I thought that was really good data, Greg, for this target, and that there is that correspondence in these structures that you're seeing. And John, your pillars and mountains under the ocean, I think that data to me seems really good. And here on the far right, you have something going on up here, storm-like energetics. When Lou is explaining how the craft surfaced to capture the missile, he does talk about there being like a storm in the water, right? All the waves and the disturbance from the UFO coming up to the surface.
And just real quick on that, where I showed that up above, kind of like what you alluded to before, I consistently in my data, I confuse something moving through the air or in the water consistently, or even in space sometimes. So I have no confidence if it's in the water or in the air.
And I think especially if you're seeing mountains and you know, maybe you're seeing mountains and you feel like someone is in this area, it does make sense to just assume that must be in the air, not underwater. And I think that for a lot of remote viewers, and you know, sometimes we see it with the sense of ether. Is it water or is it ether? So I think that comes through for a lot of remote viewers. It's a nice pattern to look for. And it's, you know, it's always good to remember for things that feel a little bit weird to probe for that weirdness. If you're like, oh, there's something here, it feels like the air is really thick or dense or something, that's kind of a good time to probe and say, okay, but is it air? Or maybe it's ocean water, or maybe it's ether, or maybe it's something else, right? Maybe we're looking at an animated show and I'm picking up on the fact that there's a digital aspect to this data. So I think that that's really good. Let me get back to this. There we go. So yeah, you did just really fantastic data on this target from everyone. And then here, so this, we're going to leave it a little bit mysterious, but for reasons that we've talked about off air, we did get Cody especially clearly. Cody, you can see here the cattle mutilation. I think that is an interesting data point. There's a lot of transference I saw between the two targets for March. So the idea of cattle mutilations links to UFOs. And so I see that as the link here, but then you have this drawing that matches so well, especially around the teeth here, the surfacing of the fossil, and you can see it's kind of the same here. And you can see it has the snout. Everyone's picking up on the snout. Jeff, for you, it comes through as like maybe like a pig bear kind of creature. But for Cody, I think it came through as an animal skull. It came through as cow mutilation. And then even the cow, I really do see the links between all of these. And Cody, you were kind of seeing them as dinosaurs. So that was kind of fun and funny. And so for the audience, it's just, we'll leave that as a little bit mysterious. But I just wanted to show some of those corroborations. Another
Maybe
thing
on that topic, maybe it's far-fetched, but I mean, one of the main thing of the target is Lou Elizondo, and he has a lot of tattoos of animals and stuff like that on his arms. And when you see him, I mean, that's the first thing I see. So I don't know if you like tattoos. I don't know, Cody, if you like tattoos. But if you like them, I guess you can be directed to that. That's just an idea.
Yeah. Well, I think the fact that they had the dinosaurs data coming through and that Jeff saw an animal as well, and that for Cody it came through as mutilated cattle, I think that ties it into the UFO component. But also I think the drawings are just such a nice match. So I thought that was kind of interesting to see. We also saw excavation, archaeological sites coming through in everyone's data. And so if you have that in your data, it might have just been related to this. So don't think of it as necessarily noise or myths or where did that data come from? That's kind of there. The paper airplane, we're going to see that in someone else's session, but you have it here. So Michael, here you have this volcano, a lake, there's a light in the area. Because we saw in Jet's session as well, this idea of maybe there's something the resting place or the origin point is in these underwater mountains, maybe. I wonder if there's something in your data here that maybe corresponds to that to some extent. But I'm not sure if it's to that or if it's maybe tying back to this idea of the dinosaurs and what ended the dinosaur era according to mainstream kind of ideas. So if you wanted to say something about your data here, Michael?
Yeah, I think I'm just tying into a lot of information on this page is related to alarm awareness, kind of like a warning signal. And I almost wonder if like the volcano is perhaps a synthesis of like the mountain origins, but also perhaps an interpretive overlay of the idea of like nuclear bombs going off. Because I did get like other site descriptions of this like pillar of smoke rising in the air, and that comes across in other sessions just as a mushroom cloud itself outright. So that's part of my own theory behind that, at least. Yeah.
While you're talking, I can't help but think of Xenu, Scientology's Xenu, putting the nuclear bombs in the volcano. So I think that's a funny little connection there.
Yeah.
And then here again,
yeah, there's information about water populations.
Yeah, and then here again, you have this idea of a waterfall, and then like the seabed or the lower landmass. And I do wonder if this is actually just the underwater area. And again, trying to locate the origin point of these underwater crafts, because you did have this walled city that's down here. And so I wonder if that's maybe the UFO itself, the black disk itself, as a walled city, or as this contained island-sized craft, or if it's their origin under the ocean. Other people also kind of had similar ideas of like fenced-in areas. So I don't know if you wanted to say a few things about that.
Yeah, so essentially the first thing that came to me was sort of this pyre at top of a basically, which to me just connected like with the volcano there and connected to the rest of the underground city. But you know, every now and then, like my attention would kind of like wander off the page and go, oh, there's like a waterfall and there's like rivers and like flowing over here, and there's like a height difference as well, which kind of where the cliffside kind of came about. So yeah, it does seem plausible that just around way to communicate sort of this big underwater situation. Maybe there's underground components too, right? So
yes, yeah, so just nice correlations there. And so that brings us to the end of that target. I think that everyone had excellent data. I think that there was a lot that leaves us with questions. And is it a true story? Is there a little bit of fiction, a little bit of a conspiracy theory rabbit hole kind of snuck into the story? Is it that the UFOs are concerned about our nuclear weapon technologies and trying to make it clear that they're going to put a stop to any of that nonsense? And we had great location data from the viewers as well this month. I just think you guys did such a fantastic job, and it was really nice to see all your data. And so I'm just going to exit out of here. And yeah, go ahead, David.
Well, so what do the viewers think based on your own work, session work? Do you think it's real? Do you think it's partially correct? Is it a big, fib? What do you think based on your data?
I think something
I like
happened.
these subjects.
Sure.
Something happened, so it could be real. I saw then the rabbit hole, but more that it's to guide normal other people to the rabbit hole, just to learn them about these subjects. I saw it like that.
Yes.
And to me, that I had so many energetics and like high intensity stuff that even though, like you said, I'm not a big fan of UFO topics, I do believe it is, if it's not a UFO, like in the alien sense, it is something probably military or something from the shadows, let's say. I don't think it's a fake story. I mean, what we know of it may not be the actual truth, but I really believe something happened because nothing in my data suggested something not real. And usually I have kind of like hints when something is not true.
Yes. Yeah. Michael, what did you think?
Yeah, from my own data, I didn't really get the impression of something like a story being told. It was just more just like matter of fact, okay, here was, the overview, here's the concepts. She was like responsible for that. So it seemed like very kind of matter of fact, this. So it didn't seem to me like there was like any kind of deception going on, perhaps. That's kind of what my own data was kind of concluding though.
Yes. Yeah. And what about you, Cody?
Yeah, I'm not sure, to be honest. Something probably happened. We're all picking up on the rockets and the missiles or whatever they were. So, but yeah, it didn't feel like a scary alien or was involved in the target. So it's probably all humans that involved in all that.
I think that's a good point. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point as well. Yeah. And John?
Yeah, I wasn't familiar with the story, and so when I listened to the interview and listened to the whole story of what he told against my dad, I really, I think it matched up pretty well as far as, they were searching for something got sucked down. There was a round. There were just so many components that conceptually matched the narrative that, and I didn't, and before when I've gotten some kind of targets that aren't necessarily real, I've gotten like little hints of like a tale or some sort of like, I don't know, some hint where it's like a tale or a story, which I didn't get. So if I had to guess, I'd say, what he was saying, it's real, I think.
Yes. And Jeff?
One of the things that I wrote at the beginning of my session was that this was an event that happened in the last 30 days. And when I worked this target, it was about 30 days after Lou's the podcast that Lou was on. So what that sort of says to me, we were viewing what Lou's story was, but in going through the other data, there was just one point where I got chills. I'm not sure who actually had written deoxygenated fish.
That was Greg.
I'm wondering if there are any things that we picked up that Lou didn't talk about if this was a real event. I don't know how we would ever know, but it would be interesting if that were the case.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of from looking at everybody's data, I kind of felt like what he's saying, the bulk of it is probably representative of an actual event, but that there were probably key elements that he left out, which would just be logical because it's, classified information that he's trying to bring out. He's really, like, if you listen to the interviews, he's super careful about, like, I can kind of tell you about this piece, but I can't really tell you about this piece. But it's like, does that mean that he's being dishonest? Not necessarily. It could just be that he can't talk about the technology used to view the UFO or some other element. Or he could be, telling you 80% of the story and he didn't talk about, I don't know, how the aliens, communicated that with them verbally or something like that, right? So it's hard to know 100%, but yeah, for me, when I can look at the data, I felt like there's stuff that's not quite right or maybe a little bit skewed, but probably the bulk of it is that he's communicating that piece is probably, correct. At least that's what I felt from looking at the data. And I was amazed because, again, remote viewing is a very difficult skill. If you look at people who work with it across the community, most people, they beginner, intermediate kind of stuff, it's really tricky to pull large volumes of information or details. And this is where the sketches, in my opinion, really help. Because if you kind of are having struggle with the pulling complex conceptual, you see somebody's drawing, you're like, oh, that kind of helps to clarify some of the information. So I just felt like everybody had good sketches, but a lot of you had extreme levels of detail where you were digging in, or very specific pieces of information. I think it was John who had that like phrase, like some of the phrases. I don't remember who it was, which viewers, but it was just like that's like that's the target, you know, or like like Jeff, you're like definitely you have like a map of the whole target, like the whole story. It's very simple, but it's clearly there. I think that was your first page. I was just like, that's so amazing, right? And this is where it gets into, because I think you just did a couple pages. It's like, did you know that you were only going to do a couple pages? Some part of you, and so you're like, I just like have to give it everything really quickly, clearly, right? I don't know. Like sometimes I think that those are little hacks that might be leveraged if you contemplate how to reverse engineer them and apply them going forward. You might find that you can accelerate your capability by applying a particular mindset, utilizing the patterns that you see. So anyways, I just thought it was really fascinating.
Yes, thank you, David. And then finally, Claudia, you really connected with Lou Elizondo. You described him exceptionally well, who he was, kind of what he looked like, his main persona, how he's viewed, what he kind of does in terms of the media. And so it was really fantastic to see. And so I wanted to ask you, how did you feel about it? Did you feel that there was truth to this? Did you feel that there was a little bit of deception? How did it come through for you overall?
Well, I heard the podcast of also and also earlier, and yeah, he seems to me a very genuine guy, and yeah, I like these subjects. And I there's so much going on what we do not know, so I'm intent to believe this. And yeah, because we have heard the stories more that where nuclear things are engaged, that lights are in the sky or whatever, so that some kind of force is trying to, well, get us out of the nuclear zone. So I believe it. Yeah.
And for me, because I'm the tasker, especially for something like this, I feel like it's important for me to maintain my neutrality. And so from the point of when I decided I was going to give this as the task to going through your data, looking at all of it, throughout my slide presentation preparation, and even now, I'm not taking a position, not in terms of like stating my position. I'm really not taking one internally either. I don't know either way. I'm not caring either way because I don't want to influence the data. And so as a tasker, that's kind of, I think, one of the responsibilities is to be able to create a tasking for remote viewers and just detach from it and not want to confirm your beliefs or anything like that. So I don't know if it's a true story. I don't know if it's a fabricated story. I don't know if there are elements of disinformation that are woven in, but I do think that your data was fascinating. Everyone connected really well with the data. I was very grateful to have Greg and John, new participants. It was fantastic. You know, it takes a lot of courage to put your work out there and then to come and to show it. And so everyone here today, you're all brave, and that's great to see. And it's good to share your data because the people in the audience, if you're remote viewers, there's a lot here to learn from. And if you kind of go through and look at the slides that I was showing, look at the data, how it's coming through, how it's being presented, you can learn a lot from seeing the work of other remote viewers. And so I think that that's just a good opportunity here for that. So that's kind of what I wanted to say. And so if there are any questions or comments that we want to talk about, someone dropped. So I think Cody's phone. So any last comments before we wrap this up?
No, the only thing I wanted to ask is that I also talked about oxygen. I saw something, a funnel with oxygen, so I don't know how to put it in here, but well, otherwise we're also talking about oxygen. So I don't know. It just struck me when I saw it just now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I go mute again.
And Cody's just back to say goodbye. And so, yeah, so I just want to thank everyone. John, as your first on-air participation, thank you for coming in. Your data is excellent. What did you feel about how your data corresponded with everybody else's?
That's my favorite part of this stuff, is just being able to kind of you compare yours to others and seeing what other people get coming from different angles, and just all the different angles, the different perspectives that people get on RV is fascinating. So love it.
Yeah, nice. And thank you to Greg in chat. Hopefully we'll see you here in the group with us next month. No pressure, but and so anyone else before we go? Nope. So we'll just say goodnight. So thank you very much to the audience. Thank you for supporting what we're trying to do here. We are trying to create this platform where remote viewers who don't necessarily have their own channel, or even if they do, they want to come and share their work and network with other remote viewers. I think it's a good opportunity to do this. And so we hope that you're enjoying the content so far. Today, we're live streaming on our main channel, Magic in the Noise. We're also live streaming on our secondary channel, which is Magic in the Noise Unlisted. So if you're seeing this video on our Unlisted channel and you want to see more of these live streams, they typically live in our main channel's live stream area, Magic in the Noise. So thank you, everyone, for being here, and happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone as well. And so with that, we say goodnight. Bye.
Bye.